Hi, welcome to the course on OpenSearch. My name is Pradeep and I'll be your instructor for this course. So let's get started. So these are my minimum hope and expectations out of the human that is taking this course. I believe that you're here and you're eager to learn the search tech. You're persistent in achieving and understanding the goals of this course. You have some amount of intrinsic motivation, and for the extrinsic skills, basic Linux navigation skills are expected out of the course. We'll be using Docker quite a bit, basic Python coding skills, and then an understanding of server-client architecture in general. A little bit about me. I'm an engineer, a developer, data engineer. I have been an AI/ML consultant, and I've also been an entrepreneur, investor, innovator, and so on. I believe titles are in the eyes of beholder. And at the bottom, you can find my more detailed experience in the orange background. You can also find me on LinkedIn using my name, and you can read all about me there. Now, in terms of your job, you could be an undergrad with no real world experience. You could have real world experience, but you might belong to a totally different domain, which might not be related to search and search tech. You might be a software developer. You might be a DevOps engineer, a SysOps engineer. You could be a data scientist, test engineer, or you are a polyglot engineer. Regardless of what your job role is, this course is going to help you understand OpenSearch, search technologies in general, and how all the use cases that we see in the search are going to apply. Now, these are some machine resources that are needed as you execute code in this course. From a hardware side, a minimum of 4 gigabytes RAM, 2 core CPUs, and a 50 GB storage space is required. We'll be using OpenSearch version 2.17 and 2.16. We'll be also using Elasticsearch as a contextual reference, since OpenSearch has been a fork of Elasticsearch when it first began. We'll be using an Ubuntu Linux machine for our server side. For the client side, depending on what laptop or desktop do you have, you could use either a Windows or a Linux or a Mac OS. We'll be using Docker. For this course, I'll be demonstrating Docker 27.2.2, and you can read the build number. We'll be using Python, Shell, SQL, DQL, and other querying languages that OpenSearch provides. Our IDE and our main interface for almost the entire course is going to be Visual Studio Code. And that is the version 1.95.3 is the one that I'll be demonstrating. Now, I've mentioned Jupyter as well, because you could execute this entire course using a Jupyter IDE too. Let's move on. Let's get into the folder organization. Let's look at an entire project from a bird's eye view, shall we? So these are the top level folders. You can see the name of the Git project that we'll be using is Elasticsearch _ OpenSearch. Ignore the ones that are in the square braces. You will know that in a moment when we get started with the Visual Studio Code. So we have two high-level folders. As you can see, both are expanded, Elasticsearch for relative context, and then we have OpenSearch. Majority of the course, we will be walking through OpenSearch, but then we'll be referring to the Elasticsearch for some relative context and comparing and contrasting it with OpenSearch. Under each of the main folders, we have a tutorial, which is named as my_tutorial. And that folder contains code, datasets that we use, and entire documentation that we use. So these are the main text and visuals that we'll be using throughout the program. The presentations, they'll be PDFs. They are provided outside of the Git repo. We'll have a doc folder, which will be detailed markdown files. We'll be having PDFs, which are PDF versions of the markdown files. We'll be having mermaid diagrams. You will know that in a moment, what mermaid diagrams are, which kind of captures a visual flow of the code. And then we'll also have the image versions, the JPEG files or the PNG files or the SVG files of the generated diagrams for sharing across wherever you want to share it with. We'll be also talking about some VS Code extensions that we'll be using throughout the course. We'll be using a Python virtual environment for executing Python code. As I mentioned, Jupyter IDE is optional. It is in lieu of Visual Studio Code. And we'll be executing all of the code in the Windows machine. That said, let's get into a little bit more details and let's start with our first demo.